what we've done, of 1,000 things that we could leave behind us. If they say just one word, well, let that word be kindness. Your kindness.
This is the FlashPoint Television Network.
Welcome to FlashPoint NewsBreak, where the truth lives. Here are today's news stories.
Welcome to NewsBreak. I'm Gene Bailey. The goal of NewsBreak is to bring you the stories from around the globe that affect your life. Let's get started with what's happening.
In South Carolina, NBC News can now project that Darlene Graham, the sister of late Senator Lindsey Graham, has won a special primary runoff against Congressman Ralph Norman. Then in Georgia, we can project that Marcy Scott, the daughter of late Congressman David Scott, will lose a special election to take over her father's seat to Gwinnett County School Board Chairman Everton Blair. And in Oklahoma, we have a projection in a Democratic Senate runoff there. Democratic Socialist Nikila Thomas winning the race to take on Republican Congressman Kevin Hern in November, beating attorney and minister Jim Priest. Also in that state, a Republican runoff in the governor's race, with Trump-backed former state Senator Mike Mazzei winning against State Attorney General Gentner Drummond. Mazzei now a heavy favorite to beat Democratic nominee State Rep Cindy Munson in November.
Let's start with Senator Darlene Graham winning the race to replace her late brother on the Republican ballot for U.S. Senate in South Carolina this fall.
First, I want to thank the good Lord who got us through these past few weeks and gave me and my family the strength to keep going. I continue to miss Lindsey every day, and there is still a big hole in my heart. But I know he's looking down right now, very proud of everyone in this room.
Yeah, it was a huge night for Senator Graham cruised to victory over Congressman Ralph Norman in a quick but sometimes bruising primary, thanks in part to President Trump himself. News Nation national correspondent Mills Hayes is in Columbia, South Carolina. Mills, you actually spoke with the senator, and she's already gearing up for the next challenge.
That's right. She already is. Good morning to you, Marky. We saw interim Senator Darlene Graham ultimately beat five-term Congressman Ralph Norman, despite some recent polls showing that it was expected to be a tight race. She beat him by about 18,000 votes. And President Trump, this really is a big win for him. And she even said that her win likely wouldn't have been possible without his help.
Mr. President, Lindsey truly loved you and viewed you as one of his closest friends. Our victory would not have been possible without you, and we are truly grateful. South Carolina is truly Trump country.
Congressman Ralph Norman gave a concession speech last night where he said that he hated the results for South Carolina and didn't understand why President Trump weighed in on the race. But he says he accepts the results and he will ultimately support Darlene Graham in the general election. And while Darlene Graham told me that she was glad that this part of the campaign was over, she still had mixed emotions because she wouldn't have won the Republican nomination without her brother Lindsey Graham dying. And she teared up in her victory speech, saying it's just not the same without him here. And I got a chance to speak with her husband and her daughter last night. They say that they are very proud of her. They're excited, and they think that this is good for the state of South Carolina. Marky?
I imagine it was overwhelmingly emotional for her and her family. The trade war between Canada and the United States is escalating this morning. Canada releasing a list of more than 700 items now subject to retaliatory tariffs of as much as 50%. Some provincial leaders now saying that the tariffs should be the beginning, not the end of Canada's retaliation against the Trump administration.
First of all, when your friend kicks you in the back, one of the first rules is you don't then go and buy $12 billion of fighter jets from that person. Out of Westport, we ship a huge amount of American thermal coal. The reason it goes out of Westport is because the Americans can't get it out of any of their own ports. They won't ship it themselves. I think that this is something that the federal government should be looking at as well.
News Nation's Corey Smith is live at the White House this morning with reaction from both sides of the border on this. I mean, Corey, from Canada's point of view, this is promises made, promises kept.
Yeah, it really is, Mark. You look, dollar for dollar, rate for rate. That is the drumbeat that we have heard from Canadian leaders going back to Sunday. Well, on Tuesday, they followed through, slapping tariffs on more than 700 products made in the USA to the tune of 27.6 billion Canadian dollars.
It's all about fairness. It's all about level playing field. It's all about supporting Canadian workers and Canadian businesses.
That was Canada's finance minister. He says each of the nearly 700 products, the Canadian tariff mirrors the U.S. tariff. That means U.S. dairy products will be subject to a 25% tariff if they go into effect on September 8th. The tariff on U.S. steel and aluminum going to increase from 25% to 50%. Appliances, ag equipment, paper, electronics, all now subject to 15, 25, or 50% tariffs. Now, look, make no mistake, this is going to cause pain on both sides of the border for businesses and consumers alike. Businesses are going to be forced to decide between eating any sort of added costs due to these tariffs or passing them on to consumers. Now, shortly after the announcement, the White House responded by comparing Canada to China, writing in a statement, Canada has been ripping off the United States for decades, and President Donald J. Trump is done letting them get away with it. Canadian leadership chose retaliation over partnership, and America is no longer willing to carry them. Meanwhile, multiple news outlets are reporting that the deal with Canada fell through after last-minute intervention from Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. He reportedly believed the deal would have been too generous to our Canadian neighbors, calling for lower vehicle tariffs. Now, we have yet to hear directly from President Trump himself since Tuesday's announcement, Markey. So all eyes on his Truth Social account right now or anything else coming out of the White House press office.
Yeah, and if anything changes before September 8th, when Canada's retaliatory tariffs are set to go into effect, we'll be watching closely. Corey Smith, I know you're working your sources. Thank you.
The head of America's Central Intelligence Agency, John Ratcliffe, has travelled to Moscow for meetings, according to U.S. media reports. It follows sightings of a U.S. Air Force military plane at a Moscow airport, along with a U.S. diplomatic motorcade. There has been no official comment from the White House, and the Russian government has declined to comment. Tom Bateman is our correspondent in Washington. So how much do we know? What do we know, Tom?
Well, hardly an attempt, Jane, by the Americans to keep this visit a secret. It was a C-17 plane, one of these huge military transporters that John Ratcliffe was flown into Moscow on. That was seen and recorded and appeared all over social media. Part of the trip from Latvia, which is a NATO ally of the Americans, was also available on flight trackers. So, you know, it was quite quickly confirmed privately by US officials that this trip has taken place. It is extremely rare for American spy chiefs to travel to Moscow. The last time that we know about was in 2021 when William Burns, then director of the CIA, went in an unsuccessful attempt to try to talk Vladimir Putin out of invading Ukraine. Now, we don't know exactly why John Ratcliffe has gone today. If it is to do with President Trump's attempts to broker a peace between Russia and Ukraine, it seems unlikely. Those efforts are stalled at the moment. Mr. Ratcliffe has been involved in previous talks with Russian intelligence officials over US-Russia detainee exchanges. But again, there isn't a huge amount on the cards at the moment with that. One other quite plausible theory is to do with growing concerns among Western intelligence officials about Russia's so-called hybrid or grey zone attacks into NATO countries, sometimes involving explosive-laden drones or cyber warfare, all things Russia denies, but which, with Moscow under growing pressure from long-range Ukrainian missile fire, there is a concern in the West that Mr. Putin might try and escalate his way out of this crisis at the moment. So this may well be a warning from Washington to Mr. Putin not to mess with NATO. No word from any officials at the moment in this building, in the State Department, neither from the CIA itself.
So Secretary of State Marco Rubio reportedly telling allies there'll be no new strikes on Iran for now. Instead, the U.S. is turning up the pressure with hard-hitting sanctions. Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst is in Tel Aviv with more, including developments on the Strait of Hormuz. Trey, is it open?
Hey, Brian, good morning. For now, the strait is partially open, and President Trump has issued a new warning to the Iranian regime about keeping the Strait of Hormuz safe. The president posted to Truth Social yesterday about this waterway, what he calls a no-mine policy, saying, I have just been informed by the United States Navy that all mines have been removed and or detonated from within the international waters of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has been notified that any ship or boat placing new mines will be immediately and systematically destroyed. He indicated that Space Force is watching every inch of the strait, as well as Iran's nuclear sites. Iranian officials continue to claim the strait is unsafe for vessels leaving the Persian Gulf. The discussion over this critical waterway comes as the United States continues to oversee millions of barrels of crude oil being exported from the Gulf each day through a southern passage. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi met Tuesday with his Omani counterpart in Tehran as the two countries continue talks toward a parallel agreement about control of the strait. Araghchi then posted on X saying Iran's commitment to peace and stability is matched by steadfast diplomacy. With our neighbors in talks with Pakistani and Omani guests, regional solutions were stressed. Proposed framework for new corridor, joint mine clearing, and future management of Hormuz is case in point. Reports do indicate that Secretary of State Marco Rubio is telling allies the United States is leaning into economic measures against Iran following a new sanctions package that was announced earlier this week. Rubio reportedly indicated that strikes against Iran are not expected in the near future, though Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says the U.S. military readiness is high should the situation change. The bottom line here, the current status quo will focus on pressuring the Iranian economy to change their behavior, but ultimately we are in this cycle, Brian, with no end in sight.
For Social Security set for October, Michelle Franzen is here to answer those top search questions. Michelle, it is good to see you. So why don't you remind our viewers first, what is COLA?
Well, it's not the drink. COLA stands for the cost of living adjustment, and the big question is what the COLA payments will be in 2027. Those adjustments are made every year, Gio.
Okay, so this announcement is expected on October 14th. So what are we expecting?
Well, we're expecting, as you mentioned, those numbers set to come out in October. Analysts estimate that there will be a 3.4% increase to payments to Social Security and the supplemental security income beneficiaries. That's lower than what analysts originally projected for 2027, but up since 2026. Now, government data shows nearly 75 million Social Security and SSI beneficiaries received a 2.8% increase for this year.
And Michelle, does inflation have any impact here on this cost of living adjustment?
It does. Inflation does factor in when the government is figuring out those figures of what the COLA payments will be for the coming year. That typically takes the latest figures that they have at the time. Those reports, though, are backward looking, Gio, which means by the time 2027 rolls around, that inflation data could be outdated in this economic climate.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, as you can imagine, Michelle, we're looking at these searches, and a lot of people are asking about the Trump administration's changes to Social Security and how that big, beautiful bill that we talk so much about, how that impacts taxes.
Yeah, Social Security is a hot topic for some time. It's been, and some lawmakers have proposed even making sweeping changes to the system. President Trump, though, all along pledging that he will protect Social Security benefits. Other concern, though, Gio, is whether Social Security funds will be there for future generations, with reported shortfalls projected to come in the coming decade.
This isn't just merch, it's a movement. FlashPoint gear is made for those who won't back down, who stand for truth, faith, and freedom.
Go to the FlashPointStore.com.
From t-shirts and hats to more.
That's where all the new products are. Check it out. You'll be glad you did.
Every piece is designed to speak before you do. Wherever life takes you, wear what you believe. Wear FlashPoint. Order now at FlashPointStore.com. Don't just follow the movement, represent it.
At least 3 Americans are missing in Nepal after flash flooding triggered a deadly mudslide. Surveillance video shows people running away as a wall of mud and floodwater swept through the border crossing between Nepal and China. Officials say 384 tourists are missing and at least 8 people are dead. Lama Hassan has more on the rescue operations now underway.
here's what we know so far. We spoke to a Nepalese tour company that confirmed 3 Americans are missing right now after a massive flash flood triggered a mudslide. You can see it sweeping through parts of Nepal. The video is just incredible and so devastating. The flood was so powerful, so destructive. It washed away everything in its path, villages and damaging roads. The flood hitting early on Wednesday morning just north of Nepal's capital, Kathmandu. A search and rescue operation is underway. A Nepalese army spokesperson saying at least 8 people are dead. And as you know, Nepal, where this took place near the border with China, is a popular destination with tourists. And according to the Nepalese Tourism Board, nearly 400 tourists are missing. The army has urged people to remain on high alert and to stay in safe places. Now, unsurprisingly, officials there are fearing that the death toll will rise. Just a reminder that in the same area last year, they also had a deadly flood that killed 9 people, and this after a glacier burst on the Chinese side of the border. Officials do believe that today's disaster is much worse.
The Trump administration is preparing what could be the largest mass visa revocation in United States history, targeting tourist and business visas of up to 200,000 foreigners who are also requesting asylum to live in the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Chris Landau maintains bogus asylum claims are swamping the system. Quote, asylum isn't supposed to be a loophole to circumvent immigration laws. Rather, it's supposed to provide a narrow safe harbor for persons persecuted for reasons like their race, religion, or beliefs.
People claiming asylum, 90+% of these have no legal merits whatsoever. So the important thing the administration is actually doing here is discouraging people from making false asylum claims.
Still, these visa revocations may not mean immediate deportation. Many who have already filed asylum claims could lose their status as business or tourist visitors, while the government still evaluates their cases.
I think a lot of them could be deported, and it's not every single one of them right away.
State officials say they're also targeting so-called birth tourism.
We are analyzing these visas from around the world, identifying travel patterns, being able to identify those repeat travel patterns that indicate that fraud.
President Trump's August 6th executive order directed federal agencies to target birth tourists and anyone who helps them. Officials say they have already revoked nearly 900 visas connected to birth tourism. Some legal experts warn proving fraud in these cases could be difficult. Legal challenges to mass visa revocations are expected, with critics arguing an asylum application does not, on its own, prove someone misrepresented their intentions when they entered the country.
Emotional court hearing in Texas today as both the genetic and surrogate birth mother of a newborn testified in what's going to be a landmark legal battle over a surrogacy agreement, and maybe surrogacy at large. A California couple hired Alaska resident and nurse McKenna West to carry their baby, but then asked her to terminate the pregnancy at 20 weeks when testing showed the baby had a life-threatening heart defect. Now, the surrogate traveled to Texas, which is a state with very strict abortion laws, and gave birth to the baby boy. The baby boy, by the way, is in critical condition after undergoing the first of multiple surgeries. Well, biological parents and the surrogate are now suing for the right to make the child's medical decisions. The genetic parents are also seeking more than $100,000. They allege the surrogate breached their agreement. Healthcare lawyer, author, and policy expert Harry Nelson joins us now from Los Angeles on a case that is getting the headlines, but might be a little complicated from a legal standpoint. So walk us through this. How common, or I guess uncommon, is it for a surrogacy agreement to address the subject of termination?
You know, it's not uncommon at all. I wouldn't say that it's part of every contract, but certainly, you know, like all contracts, it has a language about when the contract can terminate. It's unusual for these contracts to specifically address termination of pregnancy. But the contract, you know, naturally envisions where things could go wrong on all kinds of levels. So it's fascinating that this is really one of the first cases we've had where this clause has come to be such a focus of attention.
Really, in a master class for contract law studies here in the United States, it's complicated by the fact that there are 3 different states involved. So which laws apply when the parties cross state lines and leave the state where the contract was entered into?
You know, this case is going to be an important one, and people are going to be looking at this for a long time to come. One of the most interesting issues is that Texas and California have very different laws. In Texas, a gestational surrogate arrangement like this required advance court approval, which is why just a week ago we had the Texas Attorney General ready to step in and and invalidate the California order. So now the question is that the state of Texas has backed off now that the child has had surgery. The question is there going to be respect under the constitutional full faith and credit provision that Texas will give to say that the California contract for surrogacy was valid, or is McKenna West going to be successful in challenging that and having a Texas court invalidate it? So that's going to be an important question that I think is going to really shape how these contracts are prepared in the future and how people think about the risks under them.
GLP-1 drugs are now being tested for more than weight loss and diabetes. The Veterans Affairs Committee launching a clinical trial testing drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy as a potential treatment for alcohol use disorder in veterans. The study will enroll more than 600 veterans at 18 VA medical centers to see if the drug can reduce alcohol consumption and cravings. Let's bring in Veteran Affairs Secretary Doug Collins. Secretary, it's great to see you this morning.
It's good to see you as well, as always.
Yeah, so talk about this, because you are leading this charge with GLP medications to help veterans to overcome addiction. It's fascinating. Tell us.
Well, it goes back to the whole principle that President Trump has led on, and we've agreed and we've talked about this, especially even, is we're willing to try whatever works for our veterans to get them out of situations in which they, to help them out, whether it be alcohol, drugs. We're starting also a lot of issues with psychedelics that you've heard maybe a lot of in the media. And all of this is designed to help those with PTSD, TBI, concussions, injuries coming back. Some specific things we saw coming out of Iraq, Afghanistan, and stuff over the last few years. And so far it's worked. I'm also really proud, and it's a good time for me to plug VA. This is something most people don't know, that the VA research, we do a ton of research. And GLP-1 actually came out of the research labs of the VA.
Really?
And so, so we gave away the patents, we didn't keep it. So, it's been used for weight loss, it used that suppression. So we're saying, okay, if it does that suppression mechanism, will it do the same thing for like an alcohol urge or other? And if we see this happening, could you imagine, not just for our veterans, but for our society as a whole, if we could, this could be something that could really help a lot of people.
Well, I made that point on the air that if you have more Americans getting on the GLP-1s, you're going to see down the line healthcare costs come down. But with the veteran community, is there an obesity issue as well that you've seen?
You have some. I mean, you have some, and that's one of the things that I've been pushing as VA Secretary is from. I've always come in when we said we come in and the president said take care of veterans. Well, the only way we do that is put veterans first. And so when we put veterans first, we're actually saying we want you to maintain the discipline and the effect that you had in the service and maintain a healthy lifestyle overall. And so for us, that is what we're seeing. And of course, everybody, as you get a little older, you don't exercise as much, you do that. But we're encouraging our veterans to stay engaged, stay veteran, because as you just said, not only do you live a healthier, longer life, but also cost issues in the long run for you personally and for your family.
Tonight, with the start of the NFL season nearly here and kids starting football season at school, the new and alarming study, what they found in the brains of NFL players. Here's Steve Osunsami.
The warning tonight for American football players of every age is coming just as the NFL is on the field, getting ready for preseason games Thursday night. Scientists are estimating that at least 25% of nearly 900 NFL players who died between 2016 and 2021 were sick with CTE, the degenerative brain disease caused by repetitive hits. But their bigger warning comes after looking at the actual brains of 338 of those players, donated by their families to the scientists. 93.2% were positive for CTE.
It means that hundreds of current NFL players are at risk for developing this. It means that at least a quarter of any of the players on a given team are at risk for developing this.
Responding to this, the NFL says it continually strives to make the game of football safer, including by implementing strategies to reduce concussions and head impacts. The NFL Players Union also has a warning about all this tonight, calling this a call to action across the entire football ecosystem, including the NFL, college, high school sports, even youth leagues.
Court was scheduled to resume here in Oakland this morning with Instagram CEO Adam Mosseri back on the witness stand. Instead, the jury is expected to be excused as the two sides here have hammered out a deal that brings this landmark federal trial to an end. Under the terms of the settlement over the next 10 years, Meta will pay up to $17 billion to the coalition of states that sued the social media giant. It will also have to make big changes to how Facebook and Instagram operate for minors and make stronger efforts to flag harmful content and remove users under 13. Provided the court approves the deal, California alone will receive up to $2 billion. California Attorney General Rob Bonta saying, quote, "Today we have secured a settlement with Meta that will make social media less dangerous for our kids and make a world of difference for children and their families." Adding, quote, "Meta has agreed to make massive transformations that will reduce the risk of harm from its platforms and will do it within months." The long list of changes include time limits, stopping notifications, a block on the app during critical overnight hours, and bans on beauty features like plastic surgery filters. Bonta says the deal institutes real changes and protections for kids. Meta agrees and wants other social media platforms to follow suit, saying, quote, "The agreement is designed to drive industry-wide adoption, ensuring teens receive consistent protections across the apps they use most, like YouTube and TikTok. If industry peers adopt this new standard, certain provisions will be strengthened." Meta had calculated that losing this case could cost the company hundreds of billions of dollars in damages. But just after 4 days of testimony here, Sandra, this federal trial is over at a cost to Meta of $17 billion, and big changes coming to Facebook and Instagram.
Jolene, 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 I'm begging of you, please don't take my man.
The voice, the look, the wit. Dolly Parton was an American original. Singer, songwriter, actress, philanthropist, Dolly Parton was so many things. To the world, she was simply iconic. She first hit the country charts in 1966 with the song Dumb Blonde.
Just because I'm blonde, don't think I'm dumb, 'cause this dumb blonde ain't nobody's fool.
The flamboyant woman behind the music, anything but.
Joshua, Joshua, what you doing living here all alone?
4 years later, Joshua took her to #1. She racked up 25 #1 hits and 11 Grammys over her career. Her first Grammy in 1979 for Here You Come Again.
Here you come again, just when I am about to get myself together.
And then 2 more for the title track in the 1980 blockbuster movie 9 to 5.
Working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living, barely getting by. It's all taking and no giving.
That song becoming an anthem for the performer throughout her decades-long songwriting career.
It's in my head. Yeah. It comes to me, yeah. I mean, when you're a writer and a creative person. But I have my nails, too, you know.
What is that?
My acrylic nails.
How's
now,
it go?
I can make, you know, that's how I wrote 9 to 5 on the set of 9 to 5. Working 9 to 5.
Are you kidding?
But I make music, out of anything.
Parton's film career included hits like Steel Magnolias.
Welcome to Dollywood.
And her business interests expanded with her own theme park built in her hometown of Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Parton was married to her husband, Carl Thomas Dean, for 59 years before he died last year. The two never had children, but Parton gave to kids around the world through her philanthropy, distributing free books inspired by her father, who was unable to read. Today, President Trump ordered flags lowered for 1 week, writing, "There has never been anyone like her and never will." Her team late today revealing she died after bravely facing a brief battle with cancer. Her nephew announcing her passing earlier in a video.
By her example, we believe that anything was possible. She never saw a door she couldn't open, and the doors she opened made and changed history.
Dolly Parton said she did it all for the fans.
I just want to be able to lift up people if I can and do something, put some joy out there.
Watch FlashPoint every weeknight at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. This has been a FlashPoint NewsBreak presentation.
There's never been a more important moment to be bold, to speak truth clearly.